Today, I want to get this right. There it is. Today, we are finishing the second half of our lesson on service. If you're new to this class today, we've been talking about the art of Christian neighboring, and soon we're going to move into hospitality, and by soon I mean like next week, which is kind of a subset of neighboring, I guess you could say. But last week we talked about service, serving your neighbors. I'll kind of run through what we talked about last week, just the highlights, and then we'll keep moving with our lesson. We asked ourselves, what is service? And we talked about how it's lowering yourself and meeting the needs of others. We asked in studying the Bible, why do we serve? Short answer, because Jesus did. When people were hungry, he fed them. When feet were dirty, he washed them. Service isn't necessarily complicated or hard to figure out. It's sometimes really simple. We serve so that we can love like Jesus loved. We talked about one of my favorite phrases, love is as love does, just in the same way that faith without works is dead. I feel that love without works isn't love. Like it's the completion of love is loving in action. And now we're going to move into, we started this, actually it was a couple weeks ago. Thank you for your patience last week. Patsy woke up, ran out of her room, and excitedly pointed at her face and said, Mama, I have pink eye. And I was like, no. So I kept the kids home last week. And so we briefly talked about the week before, how do we serve? And I asked, how do you serve when you have kids at home? When you're busy? When your house is super messy? How do you serve when you come home from work each day just in tears and you're barely keeping it together? What does that look like? I did want to highlight, I felt like when we left that class, I wasn't particularly sensitive to acute versus chronic struggles. Sometimes you're in a period of life where you talked about how you had your year plus of illness and just like bam, 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 stuff happening in your family. Those were acute things and that were completely disruptive and you were barely functional. And I don't feel like I was necessarily very sensitive talking about I'm not over here getting on to you about, but you should be writing cards. That wasn't what I was trying to say. Sometimes when we live with chronic issues, like you are always going to have a house that's probably going to be messy. I am always going to struggle with anxiety. Whatever that forever ongoing, not like you're going through crisis thing, how do we serve in the midst of chronic stressors or just life? So, I really like the verse in 1 Peter 4:10. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. This is wonderful news because it means there's not one way to serve your neighbors. There's a multitude of ways to serve, and we are each uniquely equipped to do them differently. I talked about how Addie is super gifted in ways that I am not super gifted. And we can serve our neighbors differently. In Matthew 25, if someone can open their Bible to Matthew 25. So once again, our chapter du jour, Matthew 25. If someone could read, I think it's 14 through 30. Let me find it. Let me pull this up and make sure I told you the right thing. 25, 14 through 30. Yes, if you could read it and project.
You got it. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them. He made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter the joys of your master. He also who had received 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seeds. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talents in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seeds. Then you ought to have invested my money with the banker, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the ones who had not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Thanks a bunch. So 5 talent dude took 5 talents and made 5 talents more, right? What was the next one? 2 talents? Yeah, 2 talent dude went and made 2 talents more. So the master said to 5 talent guy, thumbs up, great job, right? And then when 2 talent guy showed up and said, I made 2 talents more, 5 made 5. 2 talent guy was like, and I made 2 talents more. The master said, what a joke. Do you see this 5 talent guy over here? Why didn't you get 5 talents? Is that what he said? No, what did he say? He said, great job. You had 2 talents, and you used your 2 talents to earn 2 talents more. And then you see that 1 talent guy who made how much? 0. There's a lot that you can learn in this parable, and I want to zoom in on kind of one part of it today. But this is not an exhaustive look at this parable. But something that is encouraging to me is that a 5 talent person is held accountable to their 5 talents. A 2 talent person is held accountable to their 2 talents. If I'm a 1 talent or 2 talent or 3 talent person, God is not holding me accountable to a 15 talent person. It's within my own means and what I can do. And those talents, that's not a literal word for like gifts, but when you look at them as your abilities to serve and the cards that life has dealt you, or whatever analogy you like, it's not that the person with 10 talents is better than me. If you remove the numbers are like a race in a game for us, but please don't look at that as the person with more talents is better. In this analogy, we're just each uniquely given things and capabilities. I am not held to the standards and the gifts that God has given Nat. Nat is held to those standards and gifts. Addie is well equipped in this way, her personality is this and that, and she can uniquely serve with those things. I'm not held to Addie's personality when I'm asked to serve. I am very extroverted, painfully extroverted. It is what it is. Other people, like my sister, are not. My sister has to drink a coffee before and after hanging out with me. Like, she just, because when we go out in public, you've seen Patsy, okay? Like, the world is your friend when you're with little Patsy Smith. And so, my sister is uniquely gifted to serve people in a way that I'm not. And her way of service isn't necessarily with crowds or in front of people, a lot of people, or whatever. I'm saying a lot of words to say, please do not compare your abilities to the person next to you, because God's not comparing that. He's given you He's made you exactly who you are, and you are the perfect person. You're just the right neighbor for your neighbor. You are completely gifted in all the ways you need to be successful. And so when you see someone else can get through a house party without hyperventilating, or can handle a lot of stress like that, or someone else that's really good at one-on-ones and you're not, whatever, stop comparing that and just really focus on the gifts that you have, that God has purposely given you to serve other people. I found that to be really encouraging. Just be faithful in what God has given you. So, what has God gifted you with? How do you serve with that? What are the gifts that you have? Think about things that you like engaging in. Sometimes with people, it's physical, it's creating, it's organizing, it's listening. What are strengths that you have? Or what are strengths of other people in this room? I just want to take a minute, and I don't want to make this too hypothetical. Like, really think about, I told you, I'm really extroverted. That is both a gift and a burden given to me by God to use. And so is my daughter. Patsy is extroverted, a gift and a burden given by God to use. What are things that you find, this isn't boisterous, what are things you find yourself gifted in to serve other people? Or is there someone in this room who's particularly gifted? Yes,
I was
ma'am?
going to say one interesting thing, it's not necessarily a particular gift,
Yeah.
but the times people have approached me and said, thank you for XYZ, it meant a lot.
Mhm.
A lot of times, I don't even remember doing that for
Yeah.
that person. And then I've also approached people and been like, that was really meaningful and made us feel welcome and special.
Yeah.
And I needed that day. And that a lot of times you can see the blank stare, like, wow, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
It's a natural outworking of who you and they are. You know?
Yeah, so I think it's important to realize that just showing up
Mhm.
and being useful in whatever way you are that
Mhm.
day is really important, because you might not even realize that you're using your gift at that
Yeah.
time.
I was just gonna say sort of something along the same line, like I know people who are going through so many struggles and so many things going on in their lives, and they'll show up. And it
Yeah.
is so encouraging, and it's just, there is something about that they're there, and they're serving and being there when they could have literally 20 excuses to not
Yeah.
be there, and they would be valid. And so there's a lot of that encouragement of just showing up, because
Mhm.
you don't know who you're going to be encouraging.
Yeah. When I think about chronic versus acute issues, Jeffrey's Nana, who is like my personal spiritual rock star, Patsy Smith Senior, she lives with chronic things. She has Addison's disease. She's like nearly 100 years old. She's like 81. And all of the things that go with that. She knows how old she is. It's fine. And so she personally struggles with, what's my role in church, in this body, in this life stage? Because it's not what it used to be. My mental health has oscillated quite a bit over the last decade. And I have, especially when my husband took his first preaching job, and Amber was not doing very well mentally. And like, I was like, I am inadequate, I cannot do this. Because I was using one image, one standard of a woman who I was not in order to serve people. And so I felt incapacitated. I was like, I can't serve because I'm not like that. No, you can serve. If you have chronic physical illness, if you have chronic mental illness, please don't compare yourself to people who don't have those things and struggle with those things. You can serve in your personal context. So Nana, Patsy Senior, she just is so, like, you know those people that are like, I don't know how to this and that and this, and they see themselves as here, and I'm like, you're up here, man. Like, she's like a spiritual, like, wow to me. And but you know what she does every single day at her kitchen table? She writes a birthday card to every single person that goes to DeBar, to Anchor Church of Christ. Every single person in that congregation gets a birthday card from her. Every single one. And then she sits there and tells me, I don't know how I can serve. I'm like, girlfriend, you're doing it. Like, I have felt the joy of a birthday card since I was a child, and it does not expire with age. And so, anyways, she is just such a picture to me of, like, those things that you don't think you're making a big difference, but, like, you are. It doesn't have to be so grand. Small things matter because it means you see them in small ways, you know?
I think that's huge to tell people what you see as like something that they do well or a talent that they have, because
Yeah.
they may be downplaying
Yes.
that, or think like, how would I weave that into work with
Mhm.
God,
Yeah.
or like their past experiences, things that have helped them be able to relate to people, like connecting people to other situations, like, hey,
Mhm.
I know that you've gone through this before too, this other girl, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful in telling people what you think that they're good at or
Yeah.
whatever, because they may not be as aware of
Yes.
it as you were.
Don't just think, wow, she's really good at this or gifted in that or encourage me. Just go tell her. Tell her.
Yeah.
Send her a text, an email, a card.
She probably overthought it like 1,200 times.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Put that one in the back closet.
Yes.
Maybe there'll be a good opportunity later.
I don't know if this is unique to people who struggle with anxiety. I've never been someone who doesn't struggle with anxiety, so you can tell me. But my therapists, I have a line of them. My therapists have well equipped me throughout my last decade, in different seasons of life, on how to, and we'll end in just a minute and finish this part next week, but there's cognitive behavioral therapy goes through like ABC frameworks, and it's a lot to get into, but basically you do a lot of cognitive mind reading. It's a cognitive distortion where I decide based on the interaction we have that I know what you're thinking about me, and it's me projecting something about myself. And so I have walked away from ladies class saying, oh, now they all think that this and that and this, and I'm terrible, and all these things. And it takes friends around me saying, that's not true. It takes people telling me, it doesn't really matter what you think about you, because that was God's word that was being taught today, not Amber's. Surrounding people around me reminding me those things, because sometimes, at least I know, when you view life through a very anxious window, you don't see anything good that you do. You see the things that you do as inconveniences or
In the way.
embarrassments. Yeah. And so instead of like you dropping off food with someone and then you thinking, oh, what if she sees that about it or thinks this, or maybe I didn't wipe my feet at her door and she's thinking that, like just tell her like, I felt so seen and spiritually fed, physically fed, you know, all those things. And so absolutely.
I just
Yes,
want to say,
ma'am.
I think that's way more common than you realize. I think that probably the majority of people think that.
Okay.
I really do.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot to overcome it. And I think that it's a great way to serve, to just come out and
Yes.
encourage people in the middle of, when, you know, I think it takes, I know from personal experience, it takes a lot to stand up in front of a group like this. You are exposing yourself, and you're extremely good at being vulnerable anyway. And I mean, in this kind of environment, and I think it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of boldness. I think probably the majority of people in the room don't want to do it. And I think, you know, for us to just take a moment and say thank you for doing that. It's huge. It is huge. It's huge.
Thank you for saying that. I know Carol recently encouraged me and a couple other ministers' wives with the phrase, you learn by doing. And so I think it's the same way, living like, and it's just what we talked about a few minutes ago, whatever your chronic debilitation is, whether it's something like anxiety or whatever, you just learn how to serve by serving within it. And because I'm not going to someday be like, I no longer have anxiety, or I no longer feel these things about this. It's, I lean on the knowledge I have about myself through God as I serve. And I know that negative thoughts about myself are not from God. And I'm quoting a therapist appointment like 3 weeks ago. Negative thoughts I have about myself are not from God. And so who cares where they're from? Mike will get into that with the Revelation study. But just like focus on the facts that God has laid out about you and really rest in those truths when you go to serve people. Well, we're going to keep talking about service next week because we didn't finish the outline, but I love today's conversation. Thank you all so much for